There is a feeling that a lot of people are walking around with right now, and most of them are too embarrassed to say it out loud. The feeling that they are doing everything right, working hard, showing up, being responsible, and still somehow falling further behind every single year. The apartment that was a stretch 3 years ago is now completely out of reach. The car payment that used to feel manageable now feels like it's suffocating you. Groceries, insurance, utilities, everything just keeps climbing. And the raises, if they come at all, never quite catch up. You're not imagining it. The math genuinely stopped working for a lot of people. And today, we're going to talk about exactly why. And more importantly, what you can actually do about it. My name is Dobers. Let's get into it. Let's start with the number that explains everything. Between 2020 and 2026, cumulative inflation in the United States hit somewhere around 23%. That means something that cost $100 in 2020 costs roughly $123 today. Groceries are up over 25%. Rent in most major cities is up 30 to 40%. Car insurance is up nearly 50% in some states. And wages over that same period grew at roughly half that rate for most workers. That gap between what things cost and what people earn isn't a personal failure. It's arithmetic. You didn't get worse at managing money. The relationship between income and cost of living shifted underneath you. And it happened gradually enough that most people didn't fully register it until it was already painful. Housing is where the pressure is most extreme, so let's start there. In 2020, the median home price in the United States was around $320,000. By 2026, that number is sitting closer to $420,000 in most markets. And mortgage rates that were under 3% in 2021 are now sitting around 6 to 7%. Here's what that actually means in your wallet. In 2021, you could buy a $320,000 home at 3% and pay around $1,350 a month. That same home today is worth $420,000 and the rate is 7%. Now you're paying over $2,800 a month, more than double. Same house, different era. Meanwhile, median household income hasn't come anywhere close to doubling. First-time buyers are getting priced out because the numbers physically don't work anymore. And renting isn't the escape it used to be either. Median rent in most mid-sized cities has climbed 35 to 40% since 2020. The affordable option got expensive, and the expensive option got out of reach. There's no good version of this story for a lot of people right now. Alright, let's talk cars, because this one snuck up on everybody. During the supply chain collapse of 2021 and 2022, car prices exploded. New car prices jumped 20 to 30%. Used car prices jumped even more. And unlike groceries, which can fluctuate, car prices largely stayed elevated. The average price of a new car in 2026 is hovering around $48,000. In 2019, that number was around $37,000. And the financing costs on top of that are brutal. A $48,000 car financed at 7% over 72 months is a $900 a month payment for 6 years. That's a car payment longer than some relationships last. Plus, insurance that's climbed 40 to 50% in many states due to repair costs and climate claims. Plus maintenance, plus fuel or charging costs. The fully loaded cost of car ownership has quietly become one of the biggest budget killers in America. And because everyone needs a way to get to work, most people don't have a choice but to absorb it. Groceries deserve their own conversation because this one hits differently than housing or cars. You can't avoid the grocery store. You go every week. And every week for the last several years, the total at the checkout has been a little higher than expected. Eggs that cost $2 a dozen in 2020 hit $8 and above in parts of the country in early 2025. Ground beef, chicken, produce, dairy, all of it materially more expensive than 5 years ago. The food got more expensive, but the paycheck didn't grow fast enough to keep up. So people are quietly making adjustments they don't talk about. Switching brands, buying less, skipping things they used to buy without thinking. Checking the total on the screen mid-shop, and doing mental math on what to put back. And feeling vaguely embarrassed about it. It's not their fault, but it feels like it is. Here's the piece that ties all of this together, and almost nobody explains clearly. We went through a period of historically low interest rates from about 2009 to 2022. For over a decade, borrowing was essentially free. Mortgages at 3%, car loans at 2%, business loans at almost nothing. And that cheap money inflated the price of everything. Assets, homes, cars, stocks, all got bid up because money was cheap and people could borrow a lot of it. Then inflation hit. The Federal Reserve raised rates aggressively to fight it, and suddenly borrowing was expensive again. But the prices that inflated during the cheap money era didn't come back down. They stayed elevated. And now you're paying high prices from the low rate era with high interest rates from the tightening era. You got the worst of both worlds at the same time, and regular people are absorbing the cost of it in their monthly budgets every single day. Let's talk about something called real wage growth, because this concept explains the frustration better than anything. Your boss gave you a 4% raise last year. That felt decent, maybe even worth celebrating. Inflation was running at 5%. So in purchasing power terms, you actually took a pay cut. You made more dollars. Those dollars bought less stuff. More money in the account, less life to show for it. This has been happening to most workers for several consecutive years. The number on the paycheck goes up, the purchasing power doesn't keep pace. And because the number went up, people feel like they should be doing fine. But fine doesn't match what they experience every month when the bills come in. That disconnect between what the paycheck says and what life actually costs is one of the most quietly demoralizing things a person can experience, because you feel like something's wrong with you when the math just doesn't add up. Nothing's wrong with you. The numbers are genuinely broken right now. Here's the generational piece that needs to be said out loud. If you're in your 20s or 30s right now, you're operating in a fundamentally different environment than the one your parents built their financial lives in. Your parents likely bought their first home when prices were 3 to 4 times the median income. Today, in most major markets, that ratio is 6 to 8 times median income. They built careers in an economy where one income could support a family comfortably, where pensions existed, where healthcare didn't consume 15% of a paycheck, where college was affordable enough to pay off without restructuring your entire financial life around the debt. That world's gone. And the advice your parents give you about money is often genuinely well-intentioned. It's also designed for a set of circumstances that no longer exist. You're not failing to follow the old playbook. You're playing a completely different game with the same rulebook your parents handed you, and wondering why none of the plays are working. Alright, let's get into what you can actually do, because frustration without a plan is just suffering. The environment's harder, that's real. But harder doesn't mean impossible. It means the margin for error is smaller, and every decision carries more weight. Step 1. Get obsessive about the gap between your income and your expenses. In a high-cost environment, that spread is the only number that truly determines your financial trajectory. Everything else is noise. That gap is signal. Protecting and growing that gap is the entire game right now, which means being ruthless about expenses that don't actually serve you. Not because you have to live miserably, because every dollar in that gap is a dollar that works for your future instead of someone else's bottom line. Step 2. Stop optimizing for the appearance of a certain lifestyle. This is the hardest one, because the pressure to look like you're doing fine is relentless. Social media, friend groups, family expectations, everyone around you seems to be living a life they probably can't afford either. Performing a lifestyle you can't sustain in this environment isn't just financially stupid, it's genuinely dangerous. The margin's too thin for that game right now. The people who come out of this period in a strong position are going to be the ones who quietly lived below their means while everyone around them stretched above theirs. It won't feel glamorous, it'll feel significant in 10 years. Step 3. Invest even when it feels pointless. When everything's expensive and money feels tight, investing feels like a luxury, like something responsible people do when life is easier. Life's not going to get easier first. The investing is part of what creates easier later. Even $100 a month into a broad index fund right now is planting something that'll matter enormously in 15 years. The environment is hard. Compound growth doesn't care about the environment. It just quietly does what it does if you give it something to work with. Step 4. Be strategic about housing because this is the biggest financial lever most people have. The decision of where to live and how much to spend on it has more impact on your financial life right now than almost any other single choice. Overspending on housing in a high-rate environment doesn't just hurt you this month, it compounds against you for years. If you're renting, know your number. Know exactly what percentage of your income is going to housing. If it's above 30%, you're in territory where building anything else becomes extremely difficult. If you're buying, run the real math. Not, can I get approved for this, but does this payment leave me room to actually build wealth? Those are two very different questions with very different answers. Step 5. Build skills that are harder to replace and harder to compress. In an economy where AI is reducing demand for certain types of work and inflation is reducing the purchasing power of stagnant wages, the people who are going to be okay are the ones whose skills are genuinely scarce. Not scarce like rare, scarce like hard to automate and hard to outsource. Communication, judgment, leadership, creative problem solving, technical depth. These things command premiums in any economic environment. Getting better at being human turns out to be a pretty solid career strategy in 2026. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. The reason nobody can afford anything in 2026 isn't a mystery. It's the result of a decade of cheap money, a pandemic supply shock, aggressive rate hikes, and wages that never quite caught up to any of it. You didn't cause this, but you have to navigate it. And navigating it well looks like this. Protect the gap between your income and your expenses like it's the most important number in your life, because right now, it is. Invest consistently even when the amounts feel embarrassingly small. Be strategic about the big decisions: housing, transportation, career. Ignore the pressure to perform a lifestyle you can't actually afford. The people who do those things in a hard environment come out the other side in a position that most people around them couldn't have imagined. The environment is hard. Your response to it doesn't have to be. If this video helped you make sense of something that's been frustrating you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you're not already. I'll catch you in the next one.